Good evening. Welcome to Beach House Center for Recovery and Facebook Live. Tonight we have a very special discussion, facing your fears in recovery through spirituality. And we have two very special guests joining me, and my name is Micah Robbins, advocate, community member, and facilitator here at Beach House. And tonight we have Hanna, author, philanthropist, entrepreneur, spiritual guru, and just an incredible presence. And Tammy Davis, alignment coach, the art of dressing down, and all kinds of wonderful things. These are two experts in the field of choosing, finding, and emphasizing your path to spirituality. And tonight we're going to look at a couple different things. We're going to see how that relates to recovery. We're going to see how that relates to everything that in our daily lives to make ourselves better, more fulfilled, and more spiritually aware. So welcome. Looking forward to a good conversation tonight. So first and foremost, I want to I'll start with Tammy. Tammy, if you would please tell our folks joining us tonight a little bit about your background and how you became involved in this really very important and emerging field.
Well, we can go back quite a few years, and how I got to be where I am today is through my own experience with addiction and being in long-term recovery. I have always had kind of a very scientific mind, but being really interested in nature, found an entire different way and found some answers to what I was seeking with creating alignment from within in order to sustain that inner strength and be able to facilitate a more sustainable recovery, I guess is how I want to say that. So that was a real short version of how I came to be here. And I'm really excited to share insights and hear from Charles as well.
Wonderful. And Charles, too, your journey has been incredible. Could you give us a little background as well?
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Charles. And I guess my background in education is medicine, and then I went into business, marketing, and so on. Had a very successful career, and then fell flat on my face after having used some drugs recreationally, which turned that into an addiction that nearly killed me. In retrospect, it's a miracle I really did not die. But it opened my eye to a new way of thinking that I would have never done otherwise. And I started a new life, and it's been a wonderful experience. It's been almost 30 years, and I have experienced even greater success in my life since then. I am retired from my business, even though it continues to run. I'm in a very fortunate place. And I also believe that our role in life is to give back what we learn. And especially in addiction, it's all about giving to receive. And so I've been very happy to be able to write my book. I've been very happy and honored to be here today. And I look forward to a really good conversation and listening to you as well, Tammy.
And Tammy, you talked about that place you came to through your addiction, and that was your catalyst, if you will, towards spirituality. And you take a very natural approach to that. And I know for a lot of our folks listening out there, sometimes that bridge to more of the natural approach, the natural world, and connecting with a true sense of nature is a challenge. What are some of the insights that you have that can help people maybe make that connection easier?
Well, it is... I guess the way I would answer that, it comes down to the life force that exists throughout nature that actually motivates everything that we see. I was actually talking with somebody earlier this morning with regards to when we find ourselves in an addictive state or we're in a relapse, the next step after we come out of it is self-annihilation. But we don't stand out there and get upset with the trees for blowing, and the leaves for swirling, and we don't get upset with a goose that's honking in the street. We just let them, and they, and so it was through the involvement of that and realizing that there was nothing wrong with me, that I was intended. I was hearing a lot of that for many years, through different personal development programs that you were intended, and I could never wrap my head around that. And then through the evolution of my business, I do have a background in pharmacology, but I was introduced to plants. I love plants, and everything happens for a reason. And I eventually found my way into working with genomics and people who were heavily involved in the Human Genome Project. And through the study of the DNA and how the DNA actually works, I discovered, and through my own course development, and I'm currently writing a book on this as well, that scientists have been talking about for years, hundreds of years, the life force that exists throughout nature that they cannot replicate. And it was through research that was conducted in 1930 that we were able to identify that the DNA of a chromosome is altered through environmental stress. And basically, this happens prior to conception. And when I realized, it actually brought me to tears, when I realized that this was occurring before I was ever conceived, there's absolutely nothing wrong with me. And so it created this huge shift from right, wrong, good, bad, and being able to see contrast. And I wasn't making mistakes. I was acting in accordance to how I was feeling at the time. I was actually taking care of myself and seeking love is really what it came down to. And it was the evolvement that and the unfolding of that I came to realize that I'd never made any mistakes. Yes, I did. I made some choices that I got to learn from, but I was creating contrast. There was no right, wrong, or good, bad Tammy. There was just Tammy, and learning how to keep myself lifted was the steps that I took. And through that, I was able to develop a program that helps people get to that point too. And that's where I want to come out and actually speak about this, because I think the more we realize that we were divinely intended and that Source is seeking to learn through us, and we get to experience ourselves through every decision, we have choice at that point.
So, Charles, as you're hearing that's sort of higher awakening, if you will, and that really is a lot of the genesis of the work you do, is finding that higher path and finding and utilizing that higher path on a daily basis in a very practical way. After hearing what Tammy was speaking about, can you tell us a little bit about that connection to the work that you're doing as well?
Well, I relate a lot to what Tammy said. I think what a lot of us have shared in this journey in addiction and recovery is there was a period of time before coming in where we are asking what's wrong with us. Why can't I control this? Why is the world against me? Why does everybody not see my point of view? And, if you would only had to be in my shoes, you would also drink, you would also do drugs. Why can't people understand and give me some empathy, some space? Why can't they even at least acknowledge my pain and hurt? Because all I heard back saying, no, this is your problem. You got to stop. There's nothing wrong with anyone else. So there's a lot of anguish and there's a lot of fear about coming into recovery because you've learned to trust no one anymore. The people even that are closest to you are the ones that turn their back on you. So, and you've tried every way to try to find a way out of this and to find, normalcy in your life. You start wondering about yourself. And even going into recovery or a treatment center, as far as you're concerned, that's just another thing you're trying and you're walking with a lot of judgment and skepticism. And the thing is with addiction, it's a disease of the mind. It's a perception disease. A lot of people don't realize that. They think it's just about drinking or about taking drugs. It's actually a disease of perception. It's the way we look at life. And that's why when you listen to Tammy, a lot of her conversation is about how she started to see things differently, how she started to realize things that made her look at herself and the world around her differently. The point is to be able to do that requires a fundamental shift in your most basic core beliefs. And when I came into this program, that was the last thing I was prepared to do. I didn't trust anyone anymore. The only thing that was left for me to trust was my brain. And yet it was the enemy. During the active phase of addiction, your enemy, your mind is your enemy. It's possessed by your disease, and it will use your knowledge, your experience, everything that you've learned and can convince yourself with to keep you in that state and actually dismiss you and kill you and get you out of society. That's kind of nature's way.
Charles, I have a question. When you talk of your mind as the enemy, there is that opportunity to transcend the mind, if you will, to sort of let go and either experience or push towards that higher learning, higher power, spiritual sense. What are some of those steps you were able to take you from that being trapped, if you will, in the mind to that next level of spiritual awakening and higher thought?
Unfortunately, it's not a series of small steps that people can take and then kind of get there. It really required a fundamental shift where you come to a point in your life and you just surrender. And you realize that you are in a very bad spot. And if you don't surrender completely, you will die. And that's the point that I reached. I was faced with imminent death and I had to surrender. And what was surrender? Surrender basically was allowing other people to let me do things that are completely contrary to my way of thinking. One of the first things, for example, they told me that I was completely opposed to is this concept that, maybe there's a God. You should think you have to find a God. And I was brought up in a religious environment and I turned completely against it. I'm also a scientist and, there was nothing that was going to convince me anymore about the concept of God. And when I actually went into recovery, I saw the word God mentioned more times in the 12 steps than in the 10 commandments. And I was, so nothing short of complete defeat would have made me re-question if there is a God or not. And I said, I can't imagine, I cannot do it. They said, then you have to fake it. And it's because I didn't trust my mind anymore, I started to do what they told me. And I started to fake, well, what if there was a God? And you know what I found out in the end? That God is not what you necessarily hear about in religion or from books or from other people. God is as personal to you and your understanding as our DNA. God can be anything that you think it is, but fundamentally it's knowing that you are part of something much bigger than yourself. And that's what Tammy alluded to, that, I'm okay. Yes, we are all beautiful creatures and we need to let ourselves be what we are. But we need to realize from another perspective that we are part of something much bigger and it's not all about us. And not everything is happening because of us or despite of us. And slowly, I started to develop a belief in something that's much bigger than myself. And I started to live in harmony with it. And that's when I started to find happiness in this life after.
And Tammy, listening to Charles speak of that total surrender, was that a similar point for you as well as you started that new journey?
Oh, absolutely. I was a party of one, and I was going to conquer the world. And yes, absolutely. It was absolute surrender into who I thought I was and what I really am a part of. And, I raised my kids to believe and to understand that they were like pebbles. And if you just drop a pebble in the water, it creates a ripple. And the interesting thing is my children were a part of that catalyst too. Like Charles was saying, how he almost lost his life. My kids were my life. And I almost lost them. And through teaching them, I learned a lot for myself, pardon me. But that's really was the awakening, was that I was merely an instrument and an opportunity to experience and create. I was part of the creator. I was not the creator, so to speak. So it was really surrendering to something much larger than myself. And the funny thing is when I was a girl, I used to talk about following your heart. And for some reason, at some point in my life, I completely shifted to my head and completely out of my heart. So it was the settling back down and becoming reconnected, so to speak.
And you mentioned too your study in the Genome Project and that almost mystery that there is, the unmeasurable scientific aspect to this, the awe factor, if you will. Where and when did that really occur for you?
That part finally occurred to me, or for me, about 7 years ago. Is that's when I was first really introduced. It was going on, but I wasn't introduced to the opportunity to meet these people until about 7 years ago. Oddly enough, one of my former neighbors used to be friends with James Watson, who was the James Watson, Francis Crick team of the Double Helix, and it was through meeting John Hauser and and James Watson was actually around at the time. I think he's gone now, but it was through the introduction to that really inspired me. A lot of it honestly was following my heart. I don't know truthfully what compelled me to follow that path, but I think a large part of it is, like Charles was saying, I resisted the idea of a God. And even as I was getting further and further along, I still wanted to resist the idea that there was something outside of me. And it was almost like I was being compelled. The more I followed my heart, I was being compelled to find something much deeper. And it was through that study that I found, like I said, the point where I could surrender into it and realize I am merely a part of something much greater.
Charles, what was your greatest fear before surrendering to this higher power?
That I would lose myself. That I would lose everything I worked very hard to do. I did not come in as a complete failure. I had done a lot of great things in my life. I had built company. I had many employees. I have seen my skills pay off in tremendous ways. I had a sense of humor. I had passion about life. I had all of these things. And I was really afraid when I saw this that I would become a shell of a person that just walks around with the 12 steps like everybody else, like we're zombies, part of a cult. And I would lose everything that means anything to me. So what was the point? I was also afraid to trust, and I was afraid to let go. And an addict in a very bad place near the end, the only thing they've got left is really kind of themselves and their mind. So there's a tremendous fear. And a lot of people are lucky to hit bottom before they die. There are a lot of people that you've seen and hear about all the time. They die before they feel that they reach that point of complete, utter fear, that they let go completely. And so that's what it took for me. And I was lucky. I consider myself one of the fortunate ones because I saw myself, and for a split second, I saw the devil that was controlling me. I saw myself as being possessed by something else. And I realized the only way I can save myself is if I stop trying to think my way out of it.
It sounds that and I want to hear from Tammy on this, but it sounds that at that point it was before being the most maybe connected you could be, you were the most isolated you could be. And Tammy, did you experience that?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, without question. And the thing is to surrender for me was, I was going to lose myself. That I was white knuckling life is what I was doing, and to surrender and to let go, I felt like I was going to die, but I was also very isolated. It was it's interesting to see how you think you actually have this whole circle of people that you're around, when the truth is it's just you and yourself, and it is a very isolating experience.
And Charles, you spoke of that as well. I mean, that seems to be the point. And with what you both teach and what you both have experienced, do you now know, or is there any way for someone to, I don't want to say not have that experience, but to see it and predict it and hopefully pull them out of that before they have to hit that moment? Is that possible to reach that higher awakening?
Well, the wonderful thing about the Fellowship of AA and Narcotics Anonymous and all these recovery programs is that they are available everywhere, but the teacher will not appear until the student is ready. You can show people, you can lead them to it, but I don't know what point it is at when somebody all of a sudden says, I've had enough. But you want to expose them to it. You want to show them that it's there so that when they come at a certain point in the future and feel that they need and want to ask for help, that they have a place to go to. And we are very fortunate and blessed to have that fellowship throughout the world, practically.
And we have, speaking of that, I mean, we have a question coming over through Facebook right now, and it's from our friend Kevin. And thank you, Kevin, for chiming in today. This is giving up power and control over one's addiction leaves a power vacuum in your life. How have you been able to fill it? And I'll give that to Tammy. How have you been able to fill the power vacuum in your life?
Well, so I'm about to quote something, and I don't know. I often understand Jimi Hendrix to be the one that says this, but I think somebody else said it first, which is, it says when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. And I believe in the microcosm and the macrocosm, and so how I was able to access power. It is a power. That does make sense. It does become like a power vacuum. But truthfully, what kind of power is it? A power of control, or is it actually the power of love? And truthfully, I'm not going to lie to you. My history comes from a very conditional life. Let me just say it that way. It was very conditional. And as I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I've been able to develop is contrast, or understand contrast. I just couldn't take the right, wrong, good, bad girl any longer. So I adopted contrast. And what I came to realize is that even in my early life, I had this conditional way of going about things, and what I wanted was unconditional. And so for me, love is unconditional when it's in the pure form, and that was where I was able to access power. Vulnerability is our opportunity to ask for what we need, and I was so ashamed of myself. So really coming to terms with all of those negative thoughts and finding, even it was just one person that I knew I could be real with and that didn't sit there and judge me, is where I was able to access the power of love. And I guess kind of fill my cup back up, so to speak.
And it sounds, as we're discussing this, that as you're talking about, to answer that question, filling that void, the void was that love void, and that higher power being very much connected to unconditional love. We're not really talking about higher power with a definition of God or some sort of parameter around it, but really this unconditional, infinite force that we can either attain, aspire to, or engage with and in. So as someone gets to that, and again, what we're hearing is that, my gosh, to find that place and to come to that point of decision where you're ready just to find that purity that's the fear area. That's the fear zone. That's the place of most vulnerability. And it sounds... sorry, Tammy, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was thinking about this earlier today because, one of these things is you always wonder what the conversation's going to be like. And this is a very individual process. So anybody who is going through recovery, or for that matter, any area of their life, it's a very individual process. And so baby steps are always what I would suggest. And when you're trying to fill that void and fill it with love, the one question that actually got me through is, what do I need right now? What do I need right now to help me feel like me? Is it a hug? Is it a deep breath? I mean, what do I need? It doesn't take a lot of time. But that was how, just these little baby steps, being able to access and fill myself, and basically building strengthening that flabby muscle, so to speak, in that area.
And Charles, for you, what are those things that you feel you need, that need right now? What are some of those things that you feel you need right now?
I think that the most important thing that people need, and really what brings you happiness, is connection to other people. It's trusting other people. It's being humble and connecting with other people at the most basic level, where you don't have that facade and these things that you try to think will make you admired or respected, or any of these things. These are actually things that separate us from other people. I want to tell you an experience of mine that maybe helps put this idea of power for me, how my experience was. I had a company and I was very successful at it, and I had lots of people working for me. And I was very good at organizing and controlling and telling what people had to do. I was very good in terms of anticipating what's going to happen in the future, plan for it, anticipate what could go wrong, and all of these things. I come into this program, and I was very successful at it. And so it was natural for me to say, well, if I'm successful at it in business, I'm going to apply it to my personal life. So I was very determined with my goals, with my friends, and how I did and what I executed. And I always planned ahead and so on. I come into this program and I'm told, let it go. You have to believe in a higher concept, and you have to, it's not your will anymore, it's God's will, and so on. And I did not understand these concepts. And I said, if I applied these concepts, for example, in my company, and I did try not to control anything or project into the future and just live in today, I'll be bankrupt in 3 days. What I've come to realize is that in the company, I was God. I had to control these things. But in my personal life, I am not God. I'm actually part of something much bigger. And there is a God that's giving me directions. And I just forgot that. I started to play God and try to control people and things around me. And what Tammy alluded after a while is that that's not the case. You are who you are, and you need to understand what is the bigger plan. And just like an employee in my company, I would want him to do what the overall company needs to do. Of course, we care about them. And of course, God or whatever the universe you think about loves me and cares about me, as I would care about any of my employees, because my company would fail if they're not healthy. You start realizing that you have another purpose in life and that we are all in it together. And I'm not the one that's the chief and commander of even my own life, and I have to respect it. So the power to me has become feeling connected to other people and feeling that I am part of something so much larger, and that I'm loved and entitled like everyone else to have a beautiful life just the way I am.
And those ripples that Tammy was talking about, it feels that those things are interconnecting with the two of you right now. Just to hear the way you're describing this journey and these moments that have created this. And it leads that we have another question coming in from Facebook, and Charles, it really kind of speaks, or I should say, it kind of lends itself to some of the things you're saying, because you talked about being able to let go of that idea of basically in the business world, you were the God, you were in control. In your personal life, you had to let that go and let God be that person, be that thing for you. And this is a question that sort of speaks to that almost duality. But for people with and here's the question, I should preface it as such, but for people with a religious background that enter into a recovery with a notion of a higher power already, how would you suggest they break that mold if needed to seek a higher power that is caring and loving?
Is it for me or for Tammy?
I should have designated, but really that's kind of it's a conversation piece. It's a conversation piece.
Do you want to go ahead first, Tammy?
I'll let you take this one first.
I hear all sorts of people in the program, those that are completely not religious, atheists, and those who are religious and so on. Sometimes if you come in and you already believe in a religious concept and you believe in God, sometimes it helps you. It does help you to do that. But there are a lot of people that come in that are very disenchanted by the idea of God or religion and are actually very anti it. And in the fellowship, we go a long way in terms of telling people God is whoever you mean it to be. It's not necessarily. Let me tell you, when I look back at my religion and so on, because I shunned all of that completely. Why? Because I did not believe the stories that I was told. I was brought up in another country, and there are also different stories back there. So when I came here and found the stories were different and every religion is different, I said, well, where is the truth? It's in none of that. And then my scientific mind told me, this is all nonsense. What I have found is that I threw out the baby with the bathwater. That when I didn't believe the story, I also threw out the concept of the existence of God. That was the biggest mistake I make, and the biggest mistake many people make. So when I came back at it the other way, I started to think of God in concepts that are not contradictory to my scientific mind or my logic mind, or is God fair or not fair, and so on. The God of my understanding today is something that's even so much larger than I ever knew before, but is very consistent with my own belief. And that gives me a comfort level knowing that I'm going to be fine and everybody's going to be fine. And when I don't understand things and they're not in my control, that's the way it's supposed to be. And it's actually a tremendous serenity to not have to worry about it and just enjoy life that's been handed to you the way it is coming to you. So I don't know if that really answers the question, but these are the thoughts that come to my mind with respect to religion and God.
Well, it sounds too, and as I'm rereading this question too, it says to seek a higher power that is caring and loving, and I'm curious for those that may have a background or an experience in their religious upbringing where that higher power was more of a punitive and unforgiving entity or belief, that everything was a failing, and that any decisions you've made or your actions are failings, and so when you come into it, you don't see the positive in that higher power. And so maybe that's the mold that is suggested that gets broken, and having a better understanding of that higher power versus the perception or experience that you once had. Tammy, did you have that change of perception or belief system, because you were talking about as a young person sort of not living that authentic life, and then being able to, through your journey and your experience, find that authentic life? Is there a certain authenticity that you found once you, again, surrendered and found that higher power? Let me rephrase that. That question didn't go where I wanted to go, but where that happens sometimes. But what is the authenticity that you feel you now have in that belief?
Well, how do I say the authenticity? Well, let's see. Let me back up and just say that I had I was brought up in a really religious background as well, and I struggled with fear. I struggled with being told that I had to live in fear. It didn't make sense to me, and I've always questioned everything. And that was part of the journey, and that was when I ran like with my hair on fire when it came to the 12-step programs, because like Charles said, you hear the word God more often, and I lost my sister at a very young age, and so I really struggled with what I was hearing versus what I felt. And I also will share something with you that I had stepped away from, but from what I can remember from a very young age, and I share this because I know each one of us can have this experience, and that is as a little girl, I couldn't understand why I could see someone sitting in front of me, but I couldn't see myself, that I was something more than this body. And I paid attention to everything else that everybody else was telling me for many years, and then I found myself involved with disordered eating and other addictions. So when I stepped into recovery, the first thing I did was anchor onto myself. Now, I know that sounds pretty strange, since I'm the one that got myself into all of this hot mess that I had found myself into. And at the same time, I was still here. And I found a strength in that. And that's where the authenticity, I thought, I couldn't believe anything anybody else was telling me. But what I did know was one thing, and that is that I am much more more than this body. And therefore, that means I'm connected to something much greater. And I could feel things that that left me feeling warm and happy and loved. And I clung to that, and that's how I found the authenticity through, and was able to resonate with a higher power that actually was kind and loving and not wanting to punish me for the choices. And that when I just really strengthened that relationship with myself, I was able to strengthen my relationship with a higher power that was going to see me through, and believing that everything happens for a reason. That was a line that was said to me, and I know many of us heard it. There's no such thing as a mistake. Everything is an experience. And once again, you hear these things and it kind of just goes in one ear and out the other, but some of it sticks after a while. And I just made a choice. Stop seeing the mistake and what's the experience. And it was, again, baby steps, and just, allowing myself to grow as I talk about, as a plant, a seed it's in the dark, but it still sprouts and it still grows. And this is what we are. We are a part of nature. We have that life force within us. And when we can tap into that, now, pardon me, now we're connected to that higher source that wants the best for us.
Do you feel, and Tammy, this is both for Tammy and Charles, I'll ask Charles first, and Tammy, I certainly would love a response, but with that ability to grab that life force, be connected, do you feel that we are at a place where connection is greater, or are we pulling away from that true, authentic connection with other people and each other?
It's a strange time, you know. I think there are people that feel very connected, and there are people that feel very disconnected and wonder how, with 7 billion people, I'm not connected to anybody. It's all of what's going on in your mind. There's a lot of beautiful people in this world that we can connect to, but it all starts from within yourself. Yes, there are a lot of people that are having a hard time. We've seen the epidemic. We're seeing the epidemic of addictions. There are a lot of people that are unhappy and so on. But there are also a lot of people that are happy. Unfortunately, the stories we hear are all the unhappy stories. We don't hear as much of the happy stories that are taking place. So I encourage, when people ask me, what is the one thing that gives you happiness and a higher perspective and so on? And to me, it's being open to other people, being able to listen to other people, to see the world from their eyes as well. Because we all have this perspective that we are born with, that is shaped by our childhood. I had 2 sisters that died as well. That went a long way in terms of shaping my mistrust of people and not wanting to be connected and all of these things. So I have a certain lens that I look at the world with, and I will have that for the rest of my life. And that's why in recovery, it's a continuous process where you continuously correct your perception, you continuously correct your need to control and to make yourself safe and all of these things. And to remember, there's nothing to fear. It is actually very beautiful. Just let it go. Just trust in the process. And it's a continuous process. And the best way to do that is through other people. If you are isolated, that's the worst thing you can do for yourself. And addiction is a disease of isolation. It will isolate you and will cut you off and will make you die. And the opposite of that is connection. And that's what in recovery it does. And that's why the fellowship is very beautiful, because a lot of people relate to one another. They start there. But as they find recovery, and as they grow step by step, as Tammy is describing, you start discovering a new way of looking at life. And somebody from the outside says, well, it sounds weird, you know, with this higher power thing and God and so on. Like, this is all like BS to me. It isn't when you compare it to where your mind is before recovery, where it is a lot of anger and remorse and confusion and frustration and just a whirlwind that goes down. This is actually a journey that is very personal to you afterwards, but you'll find a lot of brightness and beautiful space with it by being connected to other people.
Tammy, your feeling on connectedness now and the point of connectedness people are at right now?
I think we're dying for connection, literally dying for connection. You know, there's a lot of, especially in, you know, it doesn't, in any arena, people act out and we hear everybody's, you know, seeking attention, they're attention seeking. And I don't believe they're attention seeking. I believe they're actually seeking connection. Even in those states of isolation, what we really want is to be connected. We want to be seen and we want to be understood. Understanding to me is a really powerful word. And when I think back about the things that I've said throughout my life, and what I ultimately wanted was to be seen, understood, and accepted. It was those 3 things. But who am I to ask that of anybody else other than from myself? And so that's part of my journey and that's how I saw, you know, my addiction was basically, it was a road to understanding and accepting and connecting to myself. And the more solid I was with that, the more I could create that for others or with others. And I really believe that that's what's happening in the world around us. We have so much technology. And as I mentioned earlier, there's the macrocosm and the microcosm, and the inner world is just a reflection of the outer world and vice versa. And when I think about the amount of disease and disorder in this world, and I use that, I hyphenate those words. I never write that as a single word. I hyphenate it because it means lack of ease and lack of order. However you look at the world and the individual, you see the lack of ease and order. And a large part of that is the body's not communicating properly and we're not communicating effectively. I shouldn't say properly, but it's more effectively. And as a result, the body cries out for attention. You know, our behaviors are such that looks like we're seeking attention, but ultimately what it comes down to is really connecting. And the one thing that I've learned, when I was a girl, I wanted to amass, I wanted as many friends. That's why I have, you know, when I get on social media, I don't look at how many people like something or how many friends I have. I used to. That was really important to me. Now I just want a few people around me, that will accept me and understand me for who I am right here, right now, and don't expect me to have any facade, so to speak. And that's what I actually see around the world. That if I were to look around, in public, and I see people and the way they talk to one another, from their body language and such, it's funny because you'll watch someone turn their back to somebody, and you just know that what she's saying, or or whoever is saying, just pay attention to me, please talk to me, connect with me. Eye contact is always nice. And so that's what I see slipping away. And I think our job really is to connect with ourselves, to connect with something greater than ourselves, so that we can be connected to others, like Charles was saying.
And I think that in hearing both of you talk so eloquently about that, that need for connection, and the debate rages on that when we are technologically and technically the most connected we've ever been in our existence, we are driving ourselves to the greatest point of isolation. Reminds me of a writing by the great orator Garrison Keillor, who wrote a piece about popularity, and of course that piece now was written years ago, prior to all this. But the gist of it being that we spend so much time trying to just be popular that we forget that that's not really an authentic communication. That is that look at me, please look at me, but what am I looking back at? And I think that that's one of the most important things as we're trying to make connection, and as this conversation's gone through so many aspects of connectedness and connecting to a higher power and facing those fears in that higher power, but that we need to look at what we truly are and then what we truly offer back. And I think what you two have said tonight is such a gift to offer back, because there are so many at that point right now that they're either at the bottom or they're certainly seeking those answers. So before we depart this evening, and hard to believe that an hour goes by that quickly, especially with the incredible things you both are sharing with us tonight, what are, in about a minute each, what are some of those last things you'd want to share and make a connection to with the people that are listening tonight? And Charles, we'll start with Charles.
I started by saying that I was afraid to get into recovery because I would lose myself. And in fact, the opposite is what happened. And I have been having an incredible life. I do go to my fellowship a lot. I go to the meetings a lot because I connect to people, and it reminds me to be humble, because my nature is not to be humble. And I love it. I love connection to people. And I find myself getting back my sense of humor. All the talents and skills that I have them. I just use them differently. And I really appreciate so much the gifts that I have between my children and my life, and just the gift of being alive and to enjoy everything that's around and not have my mind being busy and really sabotaging my life from me. So I just wish you all, whoever is suffering from addiction, to find your way through this, because it's a beautiful life to live.
Tammy.
I would say forgiveness. Forgiveness first was the first one, and take care of yourself. Like I said, go back to asking yourself what you need. So many people think that if we focus on what we need, whether it may be, like I said, maybe it's a walk around the block, or time outside playing with the dog, or calling your friend and actually listening to their voice as opposed to texting them, but finding out what you need that actually will source you. And by all means, forgive yourself. I've done an awful lot of work around forgiveness, and there's actually a really great book that it was designed after the 12-step program, called the 12 Steps of Forgiveness. And I'll tell you, that book, I still go back to the various steps. I'll just open the book up randomly and just pick something, and it always gives me exactly what I need in that moment. So that would be, if you are facing whatever you're facing, this goes for anyone, but forgive yourself and take care of yourself, and the rest will take care of itself.
Well, I cannot thank you both enough for spending some time this evening with everybody out there in our Facebook Live audience. And I certainly wanted to give just a quick a message out there. Charles Hanna wrote an incredible book here, Higher, and I can't wait to read like 2 or 3 times through it because it's incredible. And we actually have the opportunity for folks, the first 3 people that direct message us. I gotta get I'm so behind the times in technology, but direct message us, the first 3. We're going to make sure you have a copy of this, and I want other people to reach out and see this. And also, Tammy has a social media presence. You're a part of the Twitterverse, if I'm correct, right, Tammy?
Correct, yes.
Yes, and to be reached out. And please, actually, real quick, could you tell us how to reach both of you and access the resources you bring so people can reach out to you? Because just the wealth of information and just experience and love you bring to this arena is just incredible. So we want people to be able to connect with you. So Tammy, the best way for people to reach out to you would be?
You can find me on Instagram at TammyDavis8 or at my website, Synergessence.com. Synergessence is spelled SYNERGESSENCE. It means the cooperative, effective nature.
Wonderful. And Charles, for us to find you, but when you're not in Canada or LA.
I'm easy to find, just higherbook.com.
Higherbook.com. And
and then you'll be able to see where to get the book. I have lots of videos in it, and I'm coming up with an audiobook in about a month or 2 coming out. And I'm also writing the same kind of book, but for children for ages 12 to 18, to hopefully give them some guidance, because they're the ones that are really having the hardest time in today's age.
Wonderful. And both of you have an open invitation to join us anytime. Would love to speak further on this. And again, thank you so very much for your time and the work that you do. And for everybody else out there this evening, thank you for joining us again. We look forward to doing this in about a month. So enjoy your hallowed eve coming up in the next couple of days, and we'll see you in about 4 weeks. Thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.